We had Brexit and then we had the pandemic. Took a series of decisions that we don't seem able to face up to.
Can we actually make more impact through business today?
Investment in AI is the only way that we are actually going to get out of this mess. AI represents a really big opportunity for us. This is an inevitability. Our ability to utilise AI in the right way is going to be incredibly important for mankind.
Yeah.
The opportunity way outweighs the negative. You have to be absolutely laser focused, making sure that you don't go off beam, trying to hit a short-term goal, having your compass, making sure you're really clear about what you want to do, and then having the bravery to follow that strategy. There's only one thing that you can't change, and that is where you start from. He's a complete idiot. We knew he was an idiot. Then by 2003-4, oh no, he's a genius again. If you're not paying attention, be aware of the threats, be aware of the dangers.
I'm joined by AdLand legend and top angel investor on the show today. Nigel Morris is the founder of Isobar, part of Aegis, which was later acquired by Dentsu. He then became CEO of the group in the Americas, tripling the revenue and 5xing profits, becoming US Media Executive of the Year in 2012. He added EMEA to the Americas, where he doubled the revenue and tripled the profit in just 5 years across both regions. Nigel is now a top angel investor, featured in the Founders Forum report of Top Angels, and chairs the Upside and IDX. He also sits on the boards of Landvault, a metaverse company, at Profitwheel, an AI customer intelligence platform, and Actioncy Tech. He's also an investor and working with leading AI businesses, including Synthesia, Faculty, and Metica. Finally, he is the president and trustee of Working Options in Education, a unique charity for youth employability. Nigel, what an intro.
That's only, it sounds like a lot, but that's because I've been around quite a long time.
Well, it's also the summarized version, which I'm also aware of. That's the tip of the iceberg.
Wow. Yeah.
So with that in mind, given your wealth of experience and particularly having such an international perspective, I'd like to open this interview with quite a broad question, which is your perspective on the UK economy.
Right.
What's your outlook on how the UK is doing? What's in store for us?
Well, that's the two things. What's my perspective now and what's the outlook? Because the biggest problem that the UK economy has is 15 years of productivity at 0.2%. So basically, we are just not generating revenue. So from a business perspective, we're just not productive enough to generate enough income to really invest in the things that we need to invest in.
Where has that research come from? Just out of curiosity, that 0.2%?
That's published GDP.
Okay.
If you take the last 15 years, since the financial crash,
yeah,
it's averaged out. So the Office of National Statistics, you can look that up, and it's 0.2. Funny enough, I think it was 3.4 between the end of the Second World War up until the 70s. Then through the 80s through to 2007, it was averaged out about 1.9, and now it's 0.2.
That's interesting. I actually was expecting you to say a higher number in the 80s, given the whole Wolf of Wall Street, shoulder pads.
Well, that's just
the image.
That's a little bit later, and but that's America. Where it was very rampant, and again,
right,
having worked in America, it's a very different dynamic there.
Yeah.
And of course, we'll come on to this. The big thing that the UK has had to deal with over many, many years is actually the legacy. So most of our heavy industries, certainly when I was younger, had, really had many of the same infrastructure and processes from post-industrial revolution. And the switch into becoming a more service-based economy has been quite painful. And being a service-based economy, we then somewhat shot ourselves in the foot, obviously, with Brexit, leaving aside whether I think that that's right from a strategic geopolitical basis or political one. From an economic perspective, it makes no sense whatsoever, because we're a trading nation, we're a services nation, and we're a tiny island with relatively low physical resources and natural resources. What we do have is we have tremendous human capital, and we have great IP. We have fantastic educational institutions, and right at the moment, arguably third, fourth most powerful AI country in the world.
Getting there.
And AI represents a really big opportunity for us, and we have to think about how we can really turn that to make sure that we shift that productivity, because we won't get the prosperity we want until we get the productivity. And I would say that I'm not sure that will happen, because I think the politicians tend to be hemmed in by their promises, and to take the headline of the podcast, what we haven't had in the UK for a long time is a strategy, and we haven't had a plan, and that's what we desperately need. And just come on to that. I mean, I also you have to look at any economy in the same way that you look at a business. And again, we had Brexit, and then we had the pandemic. And we took a series of decisions that we don't seem able to face up to. If you borrow 400 billion to basically prop everything up in the short term, then you've got to understand that creates a great big hole that you've then got to try and fill.
Yeah.
So not only are we not generating revenue, we've massively increased our debt. And if you're a business, you have to operate within the confines and the constraints.
It's a mess. And I'm extremely privileged to have been sat across hugely intelligent, experienced leaders, strategic thinkers, entrepreneurs. And whenever the subject of, the UK economy, geopolitics comes up, the political topic is just diabolical. It's just so pessimistic. And I've had others here talk about how actually entrepreneurialism is the better force for change, or just business, capital and going in from that direction. What are your views on that? Do you think, given the political system is just it's just riddled with so many problems to actually make progress, can we actually make more impact through business today?
Well, here's just stepping back out again. One of the problems that politics has now is, and actually in I was going to say my lifetime, but certainly the last 30 years, what everyone's having to get used to is operating in a world of 24/7, 365 media, operating in a world of social media, operating in a world where everyone has an opinion that's published, and a news agenda that, everyone was, oh my God, it's a 24-hour news agenda. It's like a 2-hour news agenda now. And how can you function in that situation? And the only way you can function is if you have, that's what I call having your compass, making sure you're really clear about what you want to do, and then having the bravery to follow that, whilst understanding you have to really understand the lay of the land and what's happening in those changes. And if I can answer it just by going back out and saying, my philosophy around business is actually very much, you have to be strategically led, right? You have to really understand as well. In strategy, there's only one thing that you can't change, and that is where you start from. And actually having a very realistic, analytical view of what is your position, what are the external factors that can affect you, and then setting out, here's where I want to go to, and then here is the best way of doing it. And then I used to use the metaphor of the compass and the radar, which is, and then what happens on a day-to-day basis is when shocks come in, whether they're huge shocks or small shocks, your ability to oscillate and make sure that you keep your eye on the compass of where you're going, but you're actually making sure that you are realistically implementing a plan that can work. Because, again, politically, we've been given promise, and because, again, everyone flip-flops between the latest, whether it's the latest piece of research or the latest social media post or the latest tweet, right? And you flip-flop around like that, you've got no chance of going anywhere.
For sure.
And that's what's happened. We've had no direction.
Yeah.
Right. And we have to have a long-term plan, and hopefully what we'll start to get is that long-term plan. And entrepreneurialism, tech, investment in AI, investment in services is the only way that we are actually going to get out of this mess. It's the only way we're going to innovate, and the only way we're going to generate competitive advantage of us and comparative advantage as a nation. The only way we're going to do that is through the knowledge industries.
What makes you think that?
Because we have there's no other industry that's going to be able to do that.
Interesting.
Right?
So you don't think it's all just hot air and buzz and hype around AI?
No, not at all.
Not at all.
Not at all. I mean,
you don't think it's overblown a bit?
Is there are we in the top of the hype cycle, and is there a bubble that's going to be? Yeah, of course.
You think we're at the top of it?
Well, I think we're getting. I think we're right in that
heady heights.
Yeah, and by that is what will happen. I started Isobar in the depths of the .com crash.
Interesting.
In the depths of the .com crash, and I went to the Aegis board, and I went, right, every headline you read is the end of the internet. Right, 3/4 of the industry has disappeared. Right, every day, every week, every month, more people are adopting the internet, and their daily usage is going up. So, what was actually happening was it was becoming stronger and stronger and stronger, just at the moment where all the financial and the short-term financial measures were saying it's gone. And you have to look about underneath the data of what's really happening. Now, AI, right, is just the latest in, probably one of the most disruptive, but it's one of the latest technological advances that society and culture have to deal with, and the economy. Now, we've got real intellectual capital within the AI space, but what we also have to look at, and this is going to be the determinant of whether whether AI helps us become a very successful economy again, is there's a bit of it is about working in AI, right? But a big part is working with AI, right? There's going to be, there are great businesses like Faculty and Synthesia and DeepMind and all, they're phenomenal businesses working in and developing, really robust large language models that will make a difference because they've been working on them for years, right? And applying AI to that. But every single business, in the same way that every single business had to adopt and work with social media, every single business will have to work with AI. Right? And if you think of AI in your business, in the businesses I chair, I'm telling them, don't, whatever you do, don't go off, and you're not suddenly an AI business. But you're working with a hyper-productive assistant, can make everything you do more efficient and more effective. That's the way you should think about it.
And this links back to the earlier productivity point that you opened with the
Correct.
UK 0.2% statistic as well. Okay, really interesting. There's a few things I want to double click on here. So one is, one of the many privileges of being sat across from you now is the perspective that you have given how wide your aperture is in terms of kind of seeing patterns, seeing history repeat itself, seeing these cycles. On your point around starting Isobar, around the .com crash, you saying that you saw this upwards trajectory of the internet. Now, culturally, I read somewhere, in the West, there's a tendency to view a particular trend as, okay, it's going in this direction, whether it's up or down. The expectation is it's going to continue in that way. Yep. Whereas in the East, this is obviously like super broad brushstroke, but culturally in the East, it's more, well, because it has been going that way for such a long time, therefore it must go down. Bottom line is, no one knows. But again, the privilege that we've got here sat with you is you've amassed enough experience that you can apply, I guess, the heuristics to actually, you've got that kind of, I guess, more of that gut instinct. You've seen this before, you recognize these patterns, you see these things kind of coming round and round again. Playing devil's advocate, is there a chance that AI might not live up to what everyone is hoping it will be, or you feel pretty confident on?
Well, so the AI is interesting because it's interesting you say that everyone thinks it will, look up to it. There's a lot of people, obviously, that they would love to put the genie back in the bottle.
Yeah.
They would love it to go away in the same way that they wanted the internet to go away. And of course it won't go away. Now, we will make AI what AI will become. But basically the leap forward that its computational power has, the potential to solve things that we can imagine solving, right, it is huge. So the ability of these models to ingest 20 years of data around cancer operations, right, or 20 years of data around the development of breast cancer, right, in minutes, seconds, right, and see and understand the patterns without any interpretation at all, right, is a tool beyond our wildest dreams.
Yeah, it's a pretty seismic shift.
It's then our ability to take that data and use it that will determine whether we use it for good and bad. What the history of human nature says is there are going to be some actors that will use it well, and there'll be some actors that use it badly. Right? So I remember first time I met Victor Synthesia. I came in, and I was like, wow. Right. And I immediately, we'll come on to timing in a minute, I immediately was like, this is exactly what the marketing industry desperately needs, because you've got, almost unlimited, infinite addressable media, but it's very, very difficult to develop personalised content and content at scale quickly enough to fill that. Anyway, 6-7 years later, or whatever it is, 6 years, that use case is only just starting to happen now. Yeah. But one of the first things I said to him is, right, where are you ethically? Where are you? Because the ability to use this negatively, right? How are you thinking about that? And he gave the best possible answer, which is, the worst answer is it's not a problem, which is what we faced with so much around social media.
Which just shows you've got a blind spot, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Is, yes, absolutely, this is a problem.
You're aware of it.
And we are really trying to bake in how we approach this ethically from the get-go.
Yeah.
So, and he actually used the terminology, which was, we want to be a good actor in the way that this media is used.
Great.
And that was an important point in me deciding to invest.
Fantastic.
As well as, I thought, it's great. So our ability to utilise AI in the right way is going to be, broadly and on a macro sense, incredibly important for the, if you like, the long and short term future of mankind.
Yeah.
But will people use it negatively? Of course they will.
Yeah.
Again, the only real lesson of history is that people don't learn the lessons of history. But I think that the opportunity way outweighs the negative. But either way, you have to understand with something as important as this, but something as fundamental as this, and the fact that this has been going on for 15 years and has only really come into people's consciousness on a mass scale in the last 12 months, is that this is an inevitability that is happening. How do we harness it to actually drive prosperity?
Yeah, amazing. Love it. Well, we're totally on the same wavelength, because I don't think you can have a conversation about AI these days without ethics coming into the conversation. So I'm glad that you mentioned that magic key word there. Switching gears a little bit, because super exciting, but there's a lot more that I want to tap into your very kind of valuable brain while I've got you here. So if we get into kind of growth strategies around business, so very exciting prospects of AI, productivity for the UK, regulation definitely needs to play a part in that. In your intro, I shared that you quintupled revenue, triple profits, et cetera, at these bigger agencies. What parallels can we draw from that experience to startup founders who are listening into this show right now? You touched on strategy before, but are there any kind of more practical tips?
Again, I think that my experience of startups in the very early stage of startup, right, is that you have to be absolutely laser focused, right, again, on what what stage you're at, what are the goals you need to do to go onto your journey. But you do have to, one of the things I think is missing is, again, making sure that you don't go off beam, trying to hit a short-term goal, quite often a funding goal, right, which then will take you away from your ultimate objective. One of the things that I think, my advice, which I would say that 5 years ago it was difficult to give this advice and it was quite often spurned, much easier today, is keep a close eye on business fundamentals. Right? In the end, cash is reality. Yeah. Now, in a world of free money, which we had, before the pandemic, post the financial crash, everything was about getting to the next funding round. Yeah. Which was quite frustrating, to be honest, at times, because everyone was like, it doesn't really matter we're just losing money and hemorrhaging money because we're hitting this new user number, which means we'll get to Series A or get to Series B or whatever it may be.
It's ridiculous, isn't it?
It is ridiculous.
Yeah, so ridiculous.
Right, but in the end, you have to, at some point, every business has to demonstrate that it's developed a product or set of services that they can deliver for a lower cost than they actually cost them to actually produce them, so that they can make a profit, generate some cash to reinvest in the business, rather than have an external flow of capital.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. But I guess just digging into the nuance there a little bit, and I know we were just talking about AI as well. So it's only been quite recently that the developments in AI have found these more practical applications, and the market is finding ways of practical adoptions of those AI technologies. So I feel like we're at those early stages of actually capitalizing on, AI businesses actually finding product market fit. But for these tech heavy, businesses that need to invest in that development up front, there is that tricky grey area of where we need that upfront capital to get to that point of proving traction and finding our product market fit. And I know firsthand a lot of founders early stage who are talking, you probably know what I'm about to say, who are talking to these early stage VC firms, and they're getting the same blanket response, which is, no, you're too early, you don't have enough traction. So it's very reminiscent of, when I first started my career, and every job application I'd send in, they'd say, I don't have enough work experience. You haven't given me a job. I need the work. So it's a chicken and egg situation. So it does seem, my read anyway of the situation is the pendulum has swung so far in the opposite direction, almost as this like silly overcorrection for all the hot air from before. But I guess what's your hot take on, yes, you need your unit economics. Yes, you need product market fit. Yes, you need traction. But at the same time, there are these exciting startups, AI or not, who do still need that upfront capital to test it out. And then you've got a privilege thing in there as well, which I'll come on to.
Yes. A lot of VCs got burnt.
Yeah.
And burnt quite badly. And I'm going to come back to this distinction between in and with. Shopify was a technology business. They were working in technology. Casper's, right, was a bed company, right, that was using technology. It got valued as a tech company. It got valued as an e-commerce company. It wasn't. They were an early adopter. They were super smart, and they went, right, because their market constraint was, we don't change our beds very often. Right? So if your valuation is 48 years profit, future profits, right, you're screwed.
So ridiculous.
It's
like Tesla's valuation.
Well, so in the end, right, Tesla's slightly different because
there's a bit more tech than a mattress.
Because they've got a lot more tech in there. It's still a ludicrously inflated
car company.
And yes, exactly. And again, in those forward projects, because people forget they forget the discipline of understanding, that multiple is a multiple of future years' earnings. Right? And unless you can get that growth going, right, very, very fast, right, you're going to be underwater very quickly. Right? So
who do you blame in that scenario, the business or the investors?
Human nature. And one of the things I will say is, just don't be greedy, right? Again, and don't chase a valuation for the sake of a valuation. If you want to earn you want to have enough money, right, but not too much money. Right? So, but to come back to your point about if you're working in AI at the moment, if you are developing a really powerful large language model with multiple different applications, if you really have got tech that can be extrapolated across a number of different use cases, then yes, absolutely, there's still a significant case for actually getting a large amount of money in that you're going to invest. And yes, you're going to overinvest for as long as you need to, and as long as you can keep the revenue going, but you're managing your cash burn effectively. If you are working with AI, right, and you're fundamentally, this is coming back to that point of you being really realistic about where you are and what you are. Right? If you're a services business, right, and you're developing products and services that utilize AI, but you're not selling AI product. You're not selling technology. You're selling a product utilizing AI, and that AI is giving you a competitive advantage. You've got to be much, much more focused on shepherding your money. Right? You've got to be much, much more. You've got to actually really start to develop. Right? Yes, this use case has product market fit. Yes, I can actually generate revenue, and I can demonstrate that I can do that, and I can demonstrate it with believable, decent unit economics, and then you'll build up a business case for it.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm probably sort of slightly switching, but 10 years ago, if I'm honest, my thesis of investing was primarily around the idea. Was it an idea that I thought, wow, this one, it's a great idea. Two, I think, right, and I like the founder. I mean, literally 5% is on idea, right? And it is much, much more around the founder. Mm-hmm. Again, I find it difficult, especially if it's a business that I think is either set up to scale or could scale. I don't like investing in individual founders. My experience is it's too hard. It's too hard, and to, if you're going to try and build even a 200-person company and you're trying to do that on your own, it's too hard.
You mean it's too hard as a solo founder?
Yes.
So you avoid that?
Well, I try. And if there's a solo founder that I really like, that I think has got the right experience, I will advise them to find a co-founder. To team up.
Okay, interesting.
As best as they can, or surround themselves. Cause
it's so hard to scale.
It's just very, very. Starting a business and scaling a business is hard. Right? It's a really hard thing to do, and when everyone says, "Oh, well, a 90% fail," it's because 90% fail. And that's quite a brutal process to go through.
Did you know that 8 out of 10 entrepreneurs go into business to be their own boss? And like 8 out of 10 stats that are made up on the spot, so was that one. But my guess is that you did not go into business to be bogged down by admin, paperwork, legal compliance. No, you went into business to have the freedom that you've always desired and to execute on the vision for your company. Strategy and Tragedy listeners listeners, this is why I am genuinely so proud to partner with Deal, the all-in-one platform for global teams. That's Deal, DEEL. They make it simple for companies managing international teams to seamlessly hire, onboard, and pay both global employees as well as contractors if you're working with freelancers. They handle all of the paperwork, exchange foreign salaries into local ones, and ensure compliance with local regulations, which honestly I think is just about as fun as it sounds. So if you're a savvy entrepreneur, then you know what to do. You need to outsource that stuff that should not be bogging you down to the experts like Deal. They are designed with the needs of a global workforce in mind. Seamless contract signing, easy expense uploads, in-platform time off management, and more. Plus, its customer support team is available 24/7, no matter the time zone. If you're ready to see how Deal can transform your global workforce operations, then head to the link in the show notes and let's dive back into the episode. Thanks for listening.
I've really tried to support female founders for reasons we might come on to later, but I really have tried to support female founders, but often that's actually not been successful. And sometimes, on 2 or 3 occasions, it's really affected their health, because no one could really, you weren't budgeting for a pandemic. What it teaches you need to budget for anything, and that kind of shock. I mean, is very.
Are there different reasons the female founder-led companies have failed in comparison to their male counterparts?
Well, I think, as I say, I think on 3 occasions it's genuinely affected their health, and I think that's partly because they felt very emotionally. They get much more emotionally involved in it than perhaps than in my experience. Yeah. They've taken more on themselves. Yeah. Right, and have been very emotionally engaged in letting people down. And so having to lay people off, right? And also that I think they were, in each of those occasions, incredibly emotionally attached, and to the idea and what they were trying to do, the mission they were trying to do. And actually, I could also say that each of them were mission-led businesses, and that was hard to take.
So you saying that has led to more of a recipe for burnout for the female founders, because they're so much more emotionally invested?
Yes, I think that's a good way of putting it.
You always beat me to the punch, Nigel, because, even before mentioning ethics, the key word on AI, which I was about to come on to, you beat me to it. And even here now mentioning female founders, I was exactly going to come on to the diversity piece here. Again, kind of AI has reared its head again, your angel investment thesis, what you're looking at, the future productivity, et cetera, et cetera. I'm going to quote another fantastic guest that I had on the show, Mandy Nyarko, MBE, who said, in transitions, there are always winners and losers. Mm-hmm. The problem is, it's always the same type of people that are the losers. Yeah. And so we're seeing the same thing. You've brought this up yourself anyway now with, the female founders. I think this is just really interesting. I'm really curious to hear more about that. But it's the same thing happening again now with this other transition with AI. The same thing happened before with .com, with all these other huge seismic shifts that we've had in industries. It's like, the fact is, the toys that boys play with when they're young, the way that they're treated, the social conditioning, the language parents use, the way they treat them when, even with fashion, children's wear, it says more action adventure on a boy's t-shirt, whereas the girls, it will still be pink and princess. And it carries through and it gets further compounded, and it's all very nuanced and complicated, of course. So you've already shared that you've had 3 female-founded-led businesses fail. What can we do to solve this? Because it's just the same. It's the men, they go on to study STEM. They go finance, technology, engineering. They go on to either be the builders of these new innovative companies. Men still hold the majority of these board roles. They're mainly investors. Yep. And, you're saying about, the nature of humanity, right? We don't learn from our mistakes. Another nature of humanity is the unconscious bias that we all have. Yep. And so I think you were just saying before about investing in people you like and who you feel familiar with. It happens to the best of us. So what can we do to stop that, compounding?
Well, it's actually, I try and so it's actually the last thing I do, which is when I say people I like, it's people I think, wow, they've got a real opinion. I like the fact that they feel they're on a mission, and I like the fact that they're very passionate about it. And this is true across the board. I think many founders don't listen enough. They don't take on board advice. They take on or it's much easier to take on board very tactical advice of, most people, honestly, what they want off me is, can you connect me to so and so? Not can I sit there and talk. So I mean, someone who is actually the brilliant antithesis of that is Timo Aamu.
Wow, interesting.
So he will sit there for 3 hours with me, and we'll chat philosophy and
that's so cool.
Wanting to understand, just really wanting to understand, the round. Because to me, the most important question always is why. Why am I doing this? Why have I started this business? Right? Why am I taking that decision? On specifically, I can't answer this question without going back. So, actually, I was getting the tragedy bit. So, age 9, my mum got cancer. She died when I was 13, and she'd been in hospital for almost all that time.
Wow.
I went to a dodgy comprehensive
in Luton.
Interestingly, when I left the board of the Guardian, around the table, I said, "You got to be bigger. You've done a brilliant job on a lot of diversity, right? But I am the social mobility around the table."
So on the social mobility piece, I'm aware that you're the founder, if that's the right term, trustee of a charity. Why that particular cause? Or tell us about the charity.
That's right. So Working Options in Education is the charity, and it is about really opening up employment opportunities for all kids 14 to 19 in the UK, but with obviously a special focus on the underserved. And it's actually founded by one of my best friends from school, who we had not seen each other for 30 years and bumped into each other at Heathrow Airport, Terminal 5, 2 weeks after it had opened. I was about to move to the US. We were chatting. We have become like best friends since.
That's so serendipitous.
And it's been unbelievable. And so, he's been a big driver. But obviously, I got involved right from the start. And the model up until the pandemic was volunteers going into schools, telling inspirational stories, right, and inspiring kids to think about the future. From the pandemic, obviously, we understood that we had to switch to more digital delivery through screens. Google.org became a big supporter of us. We have phenomenal partners and supporters now. We've scaled the charity phenomenally and having a huge amount of impact. We actually reached 1 million 14 to 19-year-olds in the last 6 months.
That's wonderful. Wow.
And we are really, really focused on helping, obviously, more underserved kids in state schools. We ran a thing on the future of work because, interestingly, all these 14 to 19-year-olds, the world of work for them, AI is going to be embedded in. Doesn't matter what they're doing. So really trying to both inspire them, but actually give them the tools, and increasingly through so many fantastic companies that are supporting us, of actually giving them work experience, taster days in offices, and round to real jobs.
Amazing.
And it's the most important thing is we have to break down. The other point about productivity is breaking down social mobility.
Yeah, definitely. Nigel, I absolutely love this. It definitely speaks to my heart. I'm definitely a huge kind of proponent of social mobility. So we'll definitely drop in a link in the show notes where listeners can go and find out more. But congratulations. That sounds amazing. Well done, Nigel.
No. We have, as I say, all we can do is be catalysts, and it's getting everyone involved. And the amount of undiscovered talent.
Yeah.
Right out in places that companies have no idea how to fish in. They don't, because they fish in a Russell Group pool, right? Especially in our industries, right? They're missing out on unbelievable talent.
Yeah, definitely. I totally hear you on that. Preach.
Most people I have to deal with, right? The only time they've seen the inside of a comprehensive is a prize giving or something like that. But when I somehow miraculously ended up at university, and I mean miraculously, right? What I did is my free ninth, which was at Lancaster, which I did economics and marketing, which was the first ever marketing chair in the UK. This is back in the 70s. But I did women in society. And I did women in society because when I was at school, I had a younger sister, a dad who was, trying to cope with what life had put in his path. I did the shopping, I did the cooking, I did the ironing. When I rocked up at university, I was the only person that could cook, iron, and do all those sorts of things.
Yeah, I bet. Right?
But I wanted to really understand, again, much more about, because the one thing I recognised is that was
the woman's job.
That's the woman's role.
Yeah.
That is what women had to do, is balance those things.
The unpaid labour.
I was good at they had a few more challenges than but I was good at. I was in fact I survived at school because I was good at sport. But again, I had to balance. Well, sometimes I couldn't do that because I had to go and do this, and so I was always very empathetic, right, with that situation. So whenever I've had a chance to, I mean, I don't really see that. I don't think of women and men in that respect as different. I've always thought, because women tend to be more resilient. But one of the things that has happened, and an observation is, sometimes that women have had to work so hard and break through so many barriers to break through to get to the top. Yeah. Sometimes, they're actually more alpha than than the alpha male.
Serves them well in business.
Right.
Yeah.
So because the challenges are greater, so we have to work. We have to work really hard. Yeah. Right. To make sure that we have a level playing field for everybody and everyone. Right? And I don't care. And which is when you come to the diversity piece, there are so many different measures of diversity, right? But really getting a mix and blend of skills, of background, of experiences, whether that's gender-based, whether it's background-based, ethnicity, whatever, it doesn't really matter, right? But what we know is, my experience is that teams that have a genuine diversity at the heart of them, right, they're more effective. They're more effective. They can be more difficult. It can be, some people are harder to manage. As best I understand, I was quite hard to manage. Because you say what you're going to, you're very determined, and you're going to say what you're going to say, and sometimes you're not playing the game. Yeah. And to take your point, I think. Again, coming into the ad industry, it was like, whoa, it was just like it
whole other
really
world.
Was. Almost everyone was privately educated.
Yeah.
They had a level of social skills and a level of confidence that I was.
So whilst demographically you might have looked like the rest, actually, the whole social mobility piece, you still stuck out like a sore thumb because of your background.
Well, it's different. So I think I would have if I'd have gone into media age 23, I would have failed miserably. Yeah. Right. But I didn't. I went in age 33, and through a very serendipitous falling into, and I spent best part of 10 years working in the fashion and textile industry. And working for Coats Viola, 63,000 people, second biggest textile group in the world, a proper hardcore manufacturing business, right? And it was the best experience I could possibly have had. And I was incredibly lucky because I was an outsider in the terms of the fact that I actually could spell marketing, and I had some rudimentary knowledge of marketing and trying to understand the consumer. I think in an industry that was, especially in the 80s, unbelievably supply-led, right? All based upon legacy systems, all based upon legacy structures, right? And what people don't understand is that in 1980, the fashion and textile industry employed 2 million people in the UK, just over. By 1990, 90% of all those people had lost their jobs. The whole manufacturing base had gone. And, and they literally, the industry went over a cliff fighting to hang on to that legacy. And then again, serendipitously, I land into the ad industry in 1992 as an outsider, and I was specifically brought in as an outsider by some very smart people. And again, the smart thing I did was not try and be good at media, was to actually leverage the fact that I wasn't, to be really objective. And of course, luck, we haven't come on to luck yet, luck plays a massive role. In 1992, this thing called the World Wide Web crops up. Everyone in the industry is over here. Everything is organised around TV.
Yeah,
everything.
Yeah, of
right?
course.
And the whole economic power behind it. And of course, the internet.
Fad.
And I'm just looking, it's the historical inevitability. And interestingly, I started banging on about it quite early. We did very well. We did incredibly well. And people, 1997 or 1998, God, he's a genius. God, he's a genius. By 2001, he's a complete idiot. We knew he was an idiot. Then by 2003, 4, oh no, he's a genius again. Then you're an idiot. And of course, it's nothing. And all you're doing is you're outside looking at what is unbelievably obvious. And in the same way that, if I'm working with, the faculty guys and the Metica guys and the Synthesia guys, I'm not there talking to them about AI and what my view of large language models is. I'm there going, right, you focus on whatever. But what you need to think about is actually, if you are scaling your business and you are thinking about how you've gone from 50 to 100, 100 to 200, both of those businesses are now well over 300 people. It's a completely different world from managing an early stage startup. And, and the smart founders, as they go through, and the smart VCs, and the caring VCs, and the ones that they're surrounding good founders with the kind of people and the kind of advice that will help them on that journey of not only building a great product, but building a great organisation. Right? Yeah. And then and it's not often that great founder, who thrives in building a brilliant product that can drive it through all those barriers from 0 to 30 people and get the product market fit, that they can become a great leader of 300 people. But it's possible. And the fascinating thing is being, lurking around in the background, trying to help a little bit, and I think, my advice to founders is try and find the people you think will help go on your journey, as well as the people that can help short term. Right? And I think for angels, it very much is, don't try and tell founders what to do in their core area, but help them in the areas where they inevitably lack some of the experience.
Yeah. Nigel, you proved my expectation completely correct that you would be a fantastic guest on a show called Strategy and Tragedy. You're a natural strategist, and obviously you've seen your fair share of tragedies along the way as well. Unfortunately, our time is up, but is there, I think you already covered, my traditional closing question of one tragedy, which I'm sorry to hear about your sad mother's passing, but I love that kind of empathetic piece piece that cultivated for you. Is there anything we haven't already touched on? I mean, I'm sure there's loads, but any kind of final words that you'd like to leave our listeners with?
So I think your traditional closing question is, again, what do you learn from the I mean, in the end, those kind of experiences can put you off in life. They can throw you off course. But if you do, grasp that nettle, they can make you more resilient. And when I say tougher, I just mean mentally tougher in terms of the ability to ride with the punches. I think going back right to the start and the strategy point, be absolutely laser focused on understanding, right? The one thing you can't change in strategy is where you start from, but be really, really clear about what is actually happening, right? Where you actually are. What are the threats? What are those opportunities? What is the lay of the land? And be really objective. It's hard to be a founder and be objective.
Yeah.
It's hard to be a business
it's your
owner
own
and be
baby.
objective.
Yeah.
But that's what you have to be. That's what you have to be.
And getting outsiders, advisors, putting together an advisory board is where that helps.
But also, just lastly, which goes across into the other, is the only thing about change is that change is absolutely a constant. It is a constant. And I'll leave you, the answer is always the frog, right? And which is, and too many businesses, right? Because if you get a frog, if you get a pan of cold water, you put it on the stove and you put a frog in it, the water gets warmer.
This is freaking me out, by the way.
The water gets warmer. Blah, blah, blah. When the frog realises, right, is in a harsh environment, it can't get out. If you throw a frog in a pan of boiling water, it jumps out. Because it immediately understands that it's in a hostile environment. It's actually true.
Yeah,
I've
heard this before.
And it leaps out. But if you're not paying attention to all the threats that are outside, you're not externally focused enough. And again, especially when you're a founder, when you're running a business, it's so easy to be internally focused because there's so many things. Keep your eyes up. Keep your eyes up. Be aware of the threats, be aware of the dangers, be aware of that environment. So be aware that AI is coming, be aware, again, what is the next level of AI? What do I need to be prepared for now? Not what am I doing about ChatGPT? It's what am I doing about the next 5 iterations? That's what you need to be really thinking about.
Nigel, I don't know why I'd never heard that story before, that anecdote. I feel like I should have, but I love it. Would you mind just repeating the story again really quickly?
So I think a metaphor that I've always used this, I used to put it in lots of presentations as well, especially in times of digital when, or new technology and social, when things are changing and people don't really, it's changing, but, and this is almost like a Kodak metaphor. But I used to say it's the frog. I used to picture of a frog looking out of water. If you take a pan of boiling water, a pan that's cold water, and you put it on the stove, and you put a frog in it, frog's there, it's happy. You turn the stove on high. It starts to think, the water's getting warmer, but that's quite nice. It's fine. I'm fine with this. When it starts to get too hot and it realises that it's in a hostile environment, its muscles have got too weak, the external environment's got too hostile, it can't get out, it balls alive. True. If you actually get a pan of boiling water and it is boiling and you throw a frog in, the frog can jump out. And it does jump out because it realises immediately in its hostile environment and it escapes. So you actually, as a business, have to yes, you've got to manage all your internal, all your people issues, all your stuff. Be resolutely externally focused as well around both the macro and, sector competitive issue. Be really focused on your environment and making sure that you are competitively placed and you are fit to survive in that environment.
Nigel, thank you so much for your pearls of wisdom. That is such an interesting anecdote. I can't believe I'd never heard that before, but I think everyone can take something away from that. Very sadly, run out of time. I wish I could have a 3-hour session with you and Tim Armu one day chatting about all things philosophy, but maybe another time. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Really appreciate it.
No, thank you.
And thank you so much for listening. Really hope you've enjoyed this episode. Make sure to hit that subscribe button. Episodes are weekly, so look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you so much.